Our first Bible reading this morning is from Matthew chapter 27, verses 1 to 10. It's on page 998 in the church Bibles. So it's Matthew chapter 27, verses 1 to 10. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. "I have sinned," he said, "for I have betrayed innocent blood." "What is that to us?" they replied. "That's your responsibility." So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this money into the treasury, since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the Field of Blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord commanded me.
The second reading is from Genesis 44, starting at verse 1, and it can be found on page 49 of the church Bibles. Now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of his house. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouths of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with the silver for his grain." And he did just as Joseph said. As morning dawned, the men were sent on their way with their donkeys. They had not gone far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, "Go after those men at once, and when you catch up with them, say to them, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? Isn't this the cup my master drinks from and also uses for divination? This is a wicked thing you have done.' When he caught up with them, he repeated these words to them. But they said to him, 'Why does my lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything like that. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found inside the mouths of our sacks. So why would we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If any of your servant is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves.' 'Very well then,' he said, 'let it be as you say. Whoever is found to have it will become my slave. The rest of you will be free from blame.' Each of them quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. Then the steward proceeded to search, beginning with the elders and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. At this, they tore their clothes. Then they all loaded their donkeys and returned to the city. Joseph was still in the house when Judah and his brothers came in, and they threw themselves to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, 'What is this you have done? Don't you know that a man like me can find things out by divination?' 'What can we say to you, my lord?' Judah replied. 'What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found to have the cup.' But Joseph said, 'Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found to have the cup will become my slave. The rest of you, go back to your father in peace.'"
Good morning, church. Great to see you all here again this morning as we jump back into the story of Joseph. Maybe you'll remember last week and how last week ended, where Pete was taking us through the prior chapters. How did last week end? It ended unresolved. And just like we say every week, we say, see you next week for the next part of the story. So a quick recap of last week particularly. The brothers of Joseph, they finally make the journey all the way over to Egypt. They're in desperate need for food because there's a famine all the way across the land and the surrounding land. The brothers of Joseph, they come face to face with Joseph. They look him in the eye and they don't know who he is, but he knows exactly who they are. He knows that they're his brothers. So what does he do with this information? Well, much like people who have been abandoned, historically abandoned, he tests his brothers. That's what he does. He tests them. He keeps one of them locked up in a prison cell, maybe the same one he was locked up in. And all the others, they go back to their own country, only to discover that in their bags of grain is all the silver that they ought to have used to pay for the grain. So now they look like thieves. But they're starving, they've got to go back. They look at each other. And the dad says, "Why are you looking at each other? You've got to go back and get food to feed us." But the brothers say, "We cannot return unless we bring Benjamin, the youngest, the blood relative of Joseph, who is dead, they think. We cannot go unless we bring Benjamin." Joseph's dad, Jacob, he's unconvinced. He's so attached to Benjamin. So Judah has to convince him. Judah says, if Benjamin dies, you can blame it all on me for the rest of my life. If Benjamin dies, I will be responsible for anything that happens to Benjamin. I'll do everything in my power to protect him. When they arrive to see Joseph again, they're in fear of their lives. They think they're thieves. They look like thieves. They're invited into Joseph's house. Will he kill them? No, he doesn't quite kill them. Instead, he puts a feast on. And Benjamin gets 5 times as much food as everyone else. Is this a ploy? He has been testing them this whole time. Will he kill them now? Is it a setup? What's going to happen? That was last week. We ended there. We didn't know what was going to happen. This week, in the story of Joseph, I think it is the chapter with the most amount of tension in it. I think everything has been building up to this chapter, or this is the chapter that has got the most tension in it. It's still building. But to appreciate the tension, we have to, because we didn't read it in one go. We've been doing it over a number of weeks. We have to remember everything that's happened in the prior chapters, everything that's happened up to this point, because it's all laced with ironies, and you'll miss them if you don't remember the story and the impact. It won't get you as much. It won't get you as much. Now, the reason we're reading the story today, the reason it's in the Bible, one of them, I think, is because this story, it makes you wonder what you would do if you were Joseph. What would you do in this story if you were Joseph? That's what I want you to be thinking about. We're going to read the story again. I'll be paraphrasing, summarising for the sake of brevity. But I'll read the whole story. We read half of the story, or Lauren read half of the story today. We're going to go just quickly over the whole thing. So, after dinner, Joseph gave instructions to his steward of his house. He said, "Fill these men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and then put in each of the sacks the silver that they brought with them. Then put my divination cup in the sack that belongs to Benjamin, the youngest brother, along with the silver of his grain." The steward did everything that Joseph had asked, and in the morning, as the brothers were sent away on their donkeys, Joseph said to the steward again, "Chase after them, accuse them of theft." So the steward did exactly as he was told. Taken aback, the brothers denied any such thing, that they had stolen anything. And they said, "If your servant is found to have it, he will die, and the rest of us will become my lord's slaves." And of course, who has it? Benjamin has it. The steward agrees to the terms. "Whoever has the cup will be my slave." As they open up each of the bags and they look through them from oldest down to youngest, the cup is found in Benjamin's bag. They tear their clothes, they return to the city, and then they enter into Joseph's house again, and they throw themselves on the ground before him. Joseph says to them, what is this that you have done? Don't you know a man like me can find things out by divination? No, they didn't know what to say to Joseph. They didn't know how to prove their innocence. They didn't know what to do. So Judah said, God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my Lord's slaves. But Joseph says, no. Only the one who is found to have the cup, he will be my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace. That's Benjamin. Then Judah spoke up again, and he said, my Lord, if I do not bring this boy back with me, it will kill his father. I myself have guaranteed the boy's safety. I myself will bear the blame all my life. So instead of taking him as your slave, please take me as your slave and let the rest return. That's the end of the chapter. That's the story. That's the chapter. It's all building up to this moment. And I hope you can start to feel the tension, at least in your head, seeing what's happening and why it's happening and the ironies in it all. But you do have to understand everything that's come before to really get this chapter. You must remember Joseph's dreams. He had a dream that his brothers and his parents would bow down before him. Instead, filled with envy, they just about kill him. And instead, Judah, he's a good guy, he just sells his brother into slavery instead. After spending years as a prisoner, Joseph eventually rises to the top of Egypt in power, and he saves his nation, the surrounding nations, from famine. Then last week, the brothers again, they come and bow down before him. Joseph locks up one of the brothers, so he makes one of his brothers a prisoner, just like he was made a prisoner. He's testing them. Then they return again. They bow down again, just like his dream said, except they're begging for their lives. But more than that, Judah, why is it that in the last chapter and this chapter, Judah is mentioned so much? Judah, who is the very person that sold Joseph as a slave in the first place, he is the one that is now offering himself as a slave to Joseph. This chapter is the moment of decision. It is in this decision where all the tension lies in the story. He literally has a second chance. Judah is in the palm of his hands, the very person that wronged him so many years ago. He's literally offering himself as a slave. It is the opportunity of a lifetime. Again, I said the reason we're reading this chapter, the reason it's in the Bible, one of them, there are many, is because it makes you wonder what you would do if you were him, if you were Joseph. And you've got to imagine yourself in his position. What would you do? Do you honestly think you would forgive your brothers? And then not only forgive them, and specifically him, Judah, but then help them. Do you really think you could do that? I think many of us struggle to get along with our brothers when they're doing good things for us. But here it is. Do you really think you could be the better man, the better woman, the better sibling in this instance? Now I'm going to pause on the story. We'll come back to it in a minute. If you're like me, you'll find it difficult to imagine yourself in Joseph's position and not just go, yeah, I guess I would. I'm a Christian after all. I should forgive them. But it's not so easy. It's not so easy to imagine yourself in the position of Joseph. So I'll tell you another story, just briefly. This story happened many years ago. Let me stress, many years ago. I was a younger man. I was driving from Mudgee to Orange on my motorbike. And there's this, just outside of Mudgee, there's this hill. It comes down, overlooks the vineyards, and then it goes into a bend. And there was 3 or 4 cars in front of me, and then a truck directly in front of me. A truck like a delivery truck, a kind of bigger truck, right in front of me. After thinking for a moment on the downhill, the truck started to overtake these 3 or 4 cars in front of it. And he gets halfway, and you know what comes around the corner? A car comes around the corner. This car comes around the corner, 100 k's an hour, this truck going 130 k's down the hill. And they're going to meet. The truck can't go anywhere, can't pull in. These cars that it's overtaking can't go anywhere. There's too many of them. What are they all going to do? Hive mind and, like Tesla's, disperse or something? They're not going to do that. What is the car that is heading headlong into this truck going to do? Well, it pulls off the road, veers off the road into the dirt on the side. And it was fortunately a 4-wheel drive car. So it was just like, it just takes it. And the truck, the truck continues to go around the bend. Because there's no option, there's no other option. It goes around the bend and it makes it, and everyone's happy and everyone's safe. Of course, no one's happy. And that was completely insane. It was the craziest thing for this truck to do. And I'm up the back, watching this whole thing unfold before me. So, I do exactly the same thing. There's another space to overtake all the cars. I overtake all the cars. I'm on a motorbike. It was way more fun. I overtake all the cars. Much easier. And then I see the truck. I'm up to the truck. I overtake the truck. And then I get in front of the truck, and you know exactly what I do. I slow right down. I'm 80. I'm happy on 80. I'm happy on 70. I'm happy with anything under 100. And this truck is right on top of me. It is right on top of me. And there's some overtaking opportunities, of course. And I'm off again. And he's off behind me. And then it's up to the bends, and I'm like, It takes a lot of self-control to go slow on a motorbike around bends, but I did it. And this truck just behind me the whole time. Oh, I loved it. It was amazing. Now, you cannot tell me that you have not dreamed of doing the exact same thing when you're driving and you see that happen and you just go, what can I do? Oh man, I really wish I could do that. And through the week, you will daydream of that situation I just told you, and just the wind in your face as you do it. You just daydream of that, and you'll be like, whew. Now, I am definitely not saying what I did was right. It was so wrong, and it was so stupid, but I had a motorbike full of 98 petrol, and I was full of testosterone, so I did it. I was a complete idiot, total idiot. All I'm saying is that when I was given the opportunity to get just a little bit of vengeance on behalf of multiple people in this situation, like a vigilante, when I was given the opportunity, I took that bad boy, and I loved every moment of it. I'm just being honest of what I did. Now, the reason that I tell you that story is because I know there is a part in you that loves it, that just loves what I did. And sometimes you wish you would do the same thing sometimes. You have to admit that in our hearts there is a desire for payback. You can't deny it, I don't think. It's not always life and death, and the emotions aren't always that high, obviously. That's just to have you feel what it's like. But you can remember when someone slights you, just a little slight, when someone slights you, what do? You give them the cold shoulder. The cold shoulder. And again, if you're honest or self-reflective, you know why you're doing it, and you kind of love doing it, even though half the time the people you're giving the cold shoulder to don't even realise what you're doing. It's kind of just for you, like a guilty pleasure. You slight them back, perhaps, when someone annoys you. I'm talking to myself here, not Robbie. When someone annoys you, don't you just love to annoy them back like it's your God-given right, Robbie? An annoyance for an annoyance, a slight for a slight, an insult for an insult, Robbie? That's what you do, isn't it? Yes, it is. And if you're like me, you do that too. In your heart, you're hurting the other person, and God sees the heart. Other people might not see the heart. God sees the heart, and what's he tell us? He tells us that, well, to hurt, to harm, even in your heart, is as bad as murder. I really find it so helpful, really humbling, to think that if we were all given the means, the motive, the opportunity, to use courtroom language, we would do the things that we judge others very harshly for. We would do those very same things, given the means, the motive, and the opportunity. So hopefully you feel it now. Back into Joseph's story. Joseph has the means. He is the second most powerful person in the known world in our story. Joseph has the motives. Here is Judah standing, grovelling before him. He has the very one that sold him into slavery. He has the motive and he has the opportunity. Judah is literally offering himself to Joseph as a slave. Now, we must think honestly, feeling the feelings that we feel about vengeance, even over small things. If you were Joseph, what would you do? What would you honestly do? Everything in the story is built up to this moment of decision. And the worst part about it, sorry to say this, is that the tension will be unresolved because that's where the chapter ends. And so we're going to look at it next week, and Pete will take us through that. But you must sit in it for a whole week and think about that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. You sit in that and you wrestle with yourself and you confront yourself. That is a good thing to do. Sorry, you have to wait a whole week. But instead, let me end with these words from Romans chapter 12. As the band come up, I'll read these words from Romans chapter 12. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Amen.